Thanks a lot for the reminder about the record button. When I submitted the name for this session, I didn't see the rest of the program for the conference, so I'm like, oh gosh, I really want to do a session about accessibility, and it talks about strategy, design, maybe even accessibility for site builders, folks who are actually building a web form. And then I looked at the schedule, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's accessibility in web form, there's one on discovery, in strategic, all the things that are sessions that I, as a front-end developer, didn't always see on the schedule. Last year, I feel like in the past 2 years, actually, there have been a lot of great accessibility stuff coming out, big picture-wise. So that's when I submitted the session, and then so actually, what I really want to do is make it so that change the name so that accessibility is really everyone's job. So I know that since some of you may have attended the other ones, I'm going to add in some pictures of dogs, babies, and some GIFs to help make it a little more interesting for you. So this is just an overview of what we're going to talk about. I'll do some intros, and then we're going to really go through each stage in the process for building. Well, we don't just build websites anymore, do we? They're really rich applications that happen to use the web as a platform. But this is the stage that a lot of our projects go through, and a few key principles at each of these stages, and use those other sessions that have preceded mine as kind of like, if you really want to dive more into the strategy piece, there's a great session on strategy. They didn't talk about accessibility per se, but kind of viewing it as a framework, through a lens. I almost kind of wish I went earlier, but again, I don't plan these things. But then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. So introduction-wise, I work at Rocket Creative. We are a digital agency in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Only a brief bus ride or car ride from here. There are about 18 of us, and we are a full-service shop. We do strategy, design, development, marketing, advertising. Starting to do a little bit more of advertising these days. Kind of wherever folks have needs and a solution is out there for you, we'll work with you and help you with those. And I've got the first check mark there. We got a picture of a dog. We do have a dog in the office. And that's who I work for. But who I am, I'm actually a new-ish dad. And all of these are related. Until very recently, I was a co-organizer for the Seacoast Drupal meetup. We've kind of gone on hiatus because my free time is just gone. I remember when I used to spend, my wife and I were cleaning on a Friday night, and I'm like, boy, our lives have changed, because when you become a parent, I kind of knew things would change, but like everything has changed. And it's totally worth it. I love my son, and I knew my wife would be a great mom, but she's like the best mom. She's awesome. And we live in Portsmouth, so it's kind of cool to live and work in the same place. And I've been a themer for Drupal since 2008, and also I've been kind of quiet on social media. So if you do want to follow me, I talk about food a lot. Sandwiches are great. Very slightly political. I used to not be political at all, but then a few years ago something else happened. I'm not going to get into that. But let's kind of just dive in here with the first step. So, at least at Rocka, a lot of what we do is marketing, and a key part of marketing is, of course, strategy. And the goal of, I think, any web project is you got to intrigue, you got to attract, and you got to convert interested people to leads for our clients. And I say clients, but leads doesn't always equal sales, although that's part of it. But for some of the nonprofit work we do, for some of the arts that we do, although they end up even for the free music festivals, that they have customers too, even if they're not paying for a product that actually gets sold. But and a key part of the strategic thinking is the brand. And the key part of brand is obviously the logo. So, the best logos have a meaning. If you were in the strategy session earlier, they had a really cool logo, and it wasn't just it was a cool thing of colors and melding and things, but it had meaning behind it. And I think the best logos actually do that as well. So Nike swoosh, if you didn't know this, it's kind of a play on Hermes, the Greek messenger god with the winged shoes. Whole Foods, you got the apple in there. It's green, wholesome goodness. We'll talk about colors in a little bit later. Apple, it's sleek. They used to have, actually I like the retro apple with the rainbow. I think that's pretty cool. As a child of the 70s, I like it. But now, it's all sleek, classy, clean, elegant, along with and that carries over through the products as well for all of these companies. So when you're thinking about accessibility for logos, this is something that you want to keep in mind. This is an example of 4 logos these are actual real logos from stores, and there's actually a blog post there that can tell you about them. But especially the one in the upper right, that is almost exactly what a colorblind test looks like. If you're colorblind, you cannot see that there's an M in there. For these other ones, you can't read I'm not colorblind, but I can barely read the Razoo logo, the crema thing. Those colors are really strange, but it's actually a really high percentage. It's almost 10% of adults have some kind of vision trouble, and it's higher among men, just the way that colorblindness works. 8% of men, and it's only 0.5% of women are colorblind. So keep this in mind, and when you're doing the strategy phase of a project, that's the perfect time to discuss the logo and what the colors are, because by the time, as a friend developer, by the time I get a logo, I'm like, these colors just don't work. It doesn't meet the contrast ratios. By then it's too late, because they're like, oh, it's our logo color, it's our brand color. Well, this is when you can address those things. So, principle 2 for strategy is customers. The people that are actually going to be using the product. And I do have a link there to. Our blog is actually they do a really good job at Inbound Teams. So this is kind of the do's and don'ts of buyer personas. And Donna at Media Current actually had a great tip for one of her sessions, is to have at least one user persona have a disability. And maybe that person is just a regular old user persona that you were going to have anyway, and then just give them a temporary disability. So maybe they broke their arm in a ski accident or something. Because that's, just at the very beginning, as much as you can have people think about, accessing a website from something that's other than a fully functional arm. So people don't always use these trackpads and mice. And in fact, it's pretty high. So for some of these disabilities that you would want to include in your user personas, 16% of adults have hearing trouble, 15% have some kind of physical functioning disability of some kind. And bring this up early and often about designing and strategizing for an inclusive experience for all your users. Bring it up early and often, that not only are the humans might not be sighted and they might not be able to use a mouse, but it's also tied that into, because you're talking to the client about SEO, responsive design, good user experience. Bring this up over and over again throughout that process. And not only is it the best thing to do, but there's it was just recently announced, Mozilla's new Scout project. They're actually building a browser that doesn't even it just is a voice interface 100%. And they just announced that last week or something. So who knows what's coming next? So it's a great way to be future friendly, to build in a way that makes a lasting project. And so for design, I'm not a designer, but my understanding is that basically graphic design is visual communications. It's solving a problem. You're achieving a certain objective with images, symbols, and words. Someone who actually went to art school helped me with that definition, so I know it's right. And one of the important things with with design, principle one is typography. And choosing the right fonts for a project is a very important first step, because it really determines how people will perceive the brand and the information. So it kind of descends things from the brand. If you go to the New Yorker magazine, you know it's a New Yorker magazine because they're using their font. Again, for inclusivity, there's actually a study on good fonts for people with dyslexia. The name of the title of the article is "Good Fonts for People with Dyslexia." So some of the good fonts are on the left, and some of the bad fonts are anything that's italics. Dries was awesome, but did anyone notice that all of his texts were italicized? Maybe I pay a lot of attention because I was talking about italicized fonts here. So the reason for that is people with dyslexia have trouble telling the difference between certain letters. So if they're all the more they look the same, the less they can perceive the differences between the letters. So if they're all italicized, the more letters they all lean the same, they all are slanted in the same direction. So it's a little hard to perceive that. So I don't know about you, but the last time I've looked at computer modern Unicode, it's not exactly eye-popping, but that's where there's a pretty cool font called Open Dyslexic, and it's totally free. There's a link to it. Of course, I'll put all these slides up so you can get it. And so you can kind of see how the letters look very different. The L's are very different than the I's. That's corporate ipsum. If you don't have it, I love corporate ipsum. It's wonderful. So there's actually, and even when it's italicized, actually they specifically designed it to look okay when it is italicized. And so that's kind of ironic because, right, for us, like if we want to emphasize something, it becomes italicized by default. But that actually makes it less likely to be read by certain people. And I'll talk about how ways you can include this font in a separate theme in your theme later. So another shocking, I don't know if you know this, but color is kind of important in design. And this carries out through branding too. So just based on the colors, who can say what brand is the upper left? Some of you may be on it right now.
Facebook?
Yes, Facebook. So lower left, what brand is that?
Drupal?
Twitter. I should have put Drupal's blue up there. So upper right might be tough for anyone under 40. That's a hint.
Snapchat. Sesame Street?
Yep, Snapchat. Did someone say Snapchat? Yeah. So we had a group of middle schoolers. Did someone say Sesame Street? Yeah. Big Bird, maybe also the Snapchat yellow. We had a group of middle schoolers come in, and it broke one of our inbound team members' heart because he started off by saying, "How many of you read blogs?" And he raised his hand, very exciting, and like no one raised their hand. So then we asked, "All right, how many of you are on Twitter?" A few hands went up. Like everyone's on, all of them at least were on Snapchat. So if that's might be where the world is headed, or maybe they'll grow up and become Facebook and Twitter users. Who knows? So the bottom right one is a little tough, but
UPS?
No. It's really hard to see that there actually is a slight gradient on that black. Believe it or not. No, that's a black. I guess the projector isn't super great. Some of you are touching it right now, actually. That's Apple. Apple's black. So Mojave, the new Mac OS, has a dark theme, right? So you're going to see a lot of dark Apple ads, I think, coming out. So the color, so actually, believe it or not, so one of my designers, I was like, what is Facebook blue? Like, why are they blue? And she actually said that blue actually speaks to trust, intelligence, and dependability, which I would say are aspirational goals for Facebook, something they haven't necessarily done a good job of with up until now. But so Apple is all about, I touched on this earlier, but it's always, white, grays, black, so you can tell the newer nothing against it, use the machine that works for you, but I guess they're going more dark. But high tech, sleek, glamorous. Honestly, I don't know. I forgot what yellow and the blue meant. But like, so Dunkin' Donuts, right? They're pink. Pink is also the new Rocca brand colors include pink, and I guess that's supposed to be like sweet, playful, and so that's why Dunkies has some pink in there. But again, with colors, so you need to think about the contrast ratios for these, and this again goes back. This is why this is in strategy. That goes back to each stage, references the other one. So the contrast ratios are things that you need to keep in mind when choosing the colors, the color palette, and obviously that ties in with the brand very nicely. But to actually, these are the target ratios for level AA, and I'm not going to go too deep into the web content accessibility guidelines, like what specifically, because they talk about putting you to sleep. Like if you ever have trouble sleeping, just start reading those, and you will fall asleep, I promise. But there's links to some resources here, but you can also there is one resource I forgot to put on here, but I'll add it to the slides and put it on the PDF. That does a really good job of making it more human readable for these. But you need to check the ratios for this. And I used to always do the WebAIM, and WebAIM actually is an awesome resource, webaim.org. They do some great work. But there's a great post about their link colors. They do have a color checker there, but I actually like this accessiblecolors.com a little better because it helps you. So the WebAIM color checker will tell you give them two colors and it says, oh, it works or it doesn't work, and you kind of have to slide and stuff. But the accessiblecolors.com, if you put in one color, it will give you a target color. So I kind of like that one a little bit better, and I'm happy to demo this as long as we have time. To demo any of these tools if anyone's interested in it. So content writing is also very, very important. And I put, usually you develop first, but you need to think about your content strategy before development actually starts, so that's why I kind of put some of that stuff in, kind of slipped content in first, just also because I wanted to. So this is an actual picture. I'm not going to say the client, but this is the actual image that they wanted to put in a blog post about being a first-time home buyer. I guess there was some analogy between baseball and celebration, but I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can do it. That's, I guess we'll allow that. But your content team, this is when they were adding the image. This is not exactly what they did, but it's close enough. So they had, they were uploading the image and then skipped the alt text, and in the title they put first-time home buyer, because they're content people, right? So they think with work, they think writing first. So the blog is about this. So I'm going to put the image. This image needs to be described as somebody being a first-time home buyer, but also, so. They kind of need help. So add some help text for them. Drupal 8 is awesome because it makes alt. I think alt is required by default with Drupal 8. So this is obviously Drupal 7, but so they wouldn't have been able to do that if it was really a Drupal 7 site. And then explain. There's text here that just explains. Because that's there's they know words, they don't know code, they don't know the web standards. So make it super easy for them. So another one that's important is, you'll be reading, and I see this all the time on news. There's like, hey, I've already written about this here, here, and here, and read more this, read more that. Like their writing is wonderfully creative blog post, but their link text is boring. It's always just click here or read this. So just telling them, hey, make your link text as creative and unique as the rest of your text. And the reason for that is if you're navigating if you're just tabbing through the site and you hit the tab key, all the screen reader hears by default is here, link, here, it tells you that this is a link and this is the text of it. So they don't really know what they're getting. Yeah, Benji.
So recently on my company's website, they brand new redesign, and then they have the blog page, and it has a teaser for half a dozen blogs, and each one says, read more.
Yeah. And
I said, no!
Yeah, it needs to be, and there's when you're building the view, or, if I assume it's a view that says read more, add in some hidden text there for the screen readers that says read more, and it can just be colon. You don't even have to make it read more about. It doesn't even need to be a complete sentence. It can be read more colon and then a hidden version of the title of the post, so that they get something other than just read more, read more, read more, because they're gonna, just like any other user, they might leave your site very, very, very quickly. Another thing is that sometimes the content writers may have been, I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to say this, need some retraining, I guess. The last time, because the web changes very quickly. We're used to that as developers living in the web space. When they first started working at their newspaper, they probably did have to use an I tag to italicize something, and that's just not the way we do things now. And Drupal makes this very easy to add some custom styles, add some classes in the drop-down list, in the styles drop-down, so you can add something instead of using the actual HTML. One thing that does happen, to add a title to an iframe, so even when you're embedding from YouTube, it doesn't, I always take out the frame border and add in a title, because just when you're navigating through with a keyboard, that's all that you don't know. You just see that it's an iframe. You don't necessarily get the title of it unless you add it. So tell them little tips like this, and that will be awesome. So I am a retired percussionist, and current developer. So I finally get to the development part of this. So the first thing is that there's this perception out in the world that developers, we're just working on our own, sitting in a little corner or in the basement, coding, constantly coding, never talking to anybody, just coding, and that's so far from the truth of what at least my experience has been. So there's a wonderful accessibility group on Drupal.org. Carrie Fisher's, I think she's the lead of it, and if not, she's definitely. Yeah, she is one of the head group organizers, and they have monthly alley talks, and they're great. They're easy. They're relevant. Some of the groups on GDO have been, some of them ebb and flow in their activity level. I feel like there's always good discussions and good people on the accessibility group. So join that group. It's super easy. Another principle is that, be people first, like during, it's not /user, it's /people, right? Because it's easy to lose sight of the fact that these are actually people coming to visit our sites. So when you changing it says browser text, it's browser text size. When you zoom in and out on your browser, like there used to be, I still see it sometimes, the increase text size button that you physically hit. You really should never have to use that. It should just work when you build a theme. You should test it, see if zooming in and zooming out with that text actually does something and doesn't break the design. With responsive design, if you're doing things right, it should just work. Tab through your site every once in a while. Especially if you have modal popping up or something else that's an interactive element, make sure all those. It just takes a little, just a little bit of time to make sure that all the web form fields are in the correct tab order. If you use a screen reader, I've found ChromeVox to be, which is it's actually a Chrome extension that you can turn off and on really easily. The voice is probably the least annoying of all of them. that I've tried. So I recommend doing that and actually use put on the headphones and tap through your site, tap through things with Chromevox. There's a few things you can do to just really, really help your users out. The other thing is switching themes. It used to be in Drupal 7, the good old days, you just use theme key module to flip that. Now in Drupal 8, there's a theme negotiator interface, and there's links to documentation on how to do that of the actual docs and a tutorial as well there. So another thing that I've been guilty of this myself, of waiting to the very end of the project. It's like, okay, the website's done, now we just need to test for accessibility. By then it's too late. So there's a great tool called Pally. It's a command line tool. You can actually add it to your build process so that when you build a template file, for example, I'm happy to demo it as well. But even if you don't, and I don't have it in our build process, but it's just through the command line. You just type Pally, give it a URL, and it works on your local web server as well, and it will do a quick check and tell you, hey, do you have errors? If so, what are they? And links to resources of where to fix it. It won't fix it for you. We're not quite to that point yet with development where websites can fix themselves, although maybe soon. And there's also a GUI version. If you're intimidated by the command line, there's actually a command line, a GUI interface that you can use that does the same thing that Pally does. But it's actually fine. It's super easy for even command line challenged people to use it. So in addition, I would encourage you to not use Pally use Pally for kind of internal dev team reviews, but it's also helpful to get the rest of your team on board with when you do some accessibility fixes or audits. And I've done a few now, and I've used a few different things. Chrome has a built-in Lighthouse checker. There's a bunch of them out there, right? There's a lot of good ones. This is just the one that I've really liked the best. Is Site Improve. It is not free. However, if you're taking the time, they do have a free Chrome extension, which I definitely want to demo that. But you can use the Site Improve Chrome extension, and then build your own. Like, just have a Google sheet where you track all the issues that it finds. Granted, if you spend a few hours on that, then you probably should have paid for Site Improve, because what it does is it logs all the errors, and it says what's been fixed. It rescans your site, because you can do an accessibility audit on your site, and then the next day someone writes a blog post and they busted it. They may accidentally left out or an incorrect alt text or something. So it really is just an ongoing process. But the other thing, instead of telling you about what Site Improve does, I'll actually just do it real quick. Let's see. Oh, mirror displays now. Where's mirror?
I think it's under arrangement.
Oh, okay. And I'm not mirrored, so I can't. Here we go. Thank you. Boom. Yeah, open source. Even our presentations are open sourced. All right, so let's go to, I don't want to pick on them, but so, can everyone see my screen? Can anyone not see my screen? So it's this little doohickey right here. So there are 2 site improve Chrome extensions, but this is so make sure you get the accessibility one. I don't know why all the menus just drop down, but you can actually filter by level. So right now I'm just filtering by single A, and one of the reasons I like site improve is that getting a designer to open developer tools and be like, hey, look, there's this red dot next to this thing here. That's probably not going to happen. But if you say, hey, put this extension in, and then you can actually see some of these things, that's probably more likely to happen. And the other thing I like about it is that it catches some things that Pally doesn't necessarily flag. Not that it's better or worse, because Pally actually they kind of complement each other well. So I encourage you to do both. But just because it's flagged over here doesn't mean that it's a quote unquote issue. Some of the things obviously you need a human to look at to determine if an image is decorative or not. So when you click on it, you can see that these are images that don't have empty alt text in them, and they are not decorative, as you can see. But once you have DevTools open, you can click it and you're like, oh, it's this image. So even though this isn't decorative, I guess maybe, if Acquia, I would put Acquia logo as the alt text here. So there's that. So focus order, tabbing sequence, like obviously it doesn't know that it can't tab through the site for you, but it reminds you, hey, I can tab through this. So if I were doing a manual, accessibility audit, I would use this and match. And actually, we're going to have a series of blog posts about accessibility, and I'm going to share. It'll be an empty spreadsheet, but of one that I already set up. So that'll save you a little bit of time. Half of the time is just setting up these sheets, right? So I would take the issues from Site Improve, put them in the sheet, and then because that's one thing that Site Improve has to make money too, right? So what they do is they let you log in and keep track of it all. The extension will just flag, it has no memory of the stuff. So you'll need another tool to kind of track that. I don't get money. I don't get a referral fee or anything from them. I promise. This is just one of the things that I found that I liked. That I think other people might as well. So it tells, in addition. So let's say we click on something like, okay, does the ARIA role match the functionality of the element? Like, all right, this sounds vaguely familiar. What does it mean again? So it has links down here to the exact guidelines, and it has some descriptive text, and if you log into, if you actually have an account in Site Improve, which some of our clients have chosen to do that, which is great, because then you can say, okay, this is fine. You can mark it as okay on this page, but then the next page that's different. You can also group your content by you can say, oh, these are all the blog posts, so I know that this this button is fine across all blog posts, so you can say, okay, don't scan for this button anymore on this blog post. And obviously you can mark things as cleared as well. And then you can, say if you can also just rescan right here. So say, oh, I fixed this. I'm gonna push it up, see if this is this is still an issue, and if it flags, it will mark as 0. So that's one of the cool things I like about Site Improve. And there's a link to the Chrome extension here, but yeah, it's the accessibility checker. I forget what the other one is that they have, but they also do GDPR stuff and a few other they do some SEO things. So it's not just about accessibility, but that's a good piece, a good chunk of their business, I would assume. All right, so we've got plenty of time for questions, which was my goal. I think we have plenty of time. How long? What do we go to? 3:20,
I guess.
All right, sweet. Yeah. So Matt.
Thank you, JP, for doing this.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
As you, JP, know, I'm a big advocate for accessibility as well. But I haven't had a chance to look a whole lot into Pally, and I was wondering if you had, I don't know if anybody else here is interested, but I'm interested to learn and see a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure.
You said if you have time at the end.
Yes.
Font size?
There we go. All right, so you literally just make sure you do it with the 11 in there. So, well, let's just keep, and it should resolve to HTTPS. I think I can just leave that off. Yeah, so you can see that there's, and it does give you the, oh, so these are reCAPTCHA issues. It didn't get those alts. I wonder if those are added maybe via JavaScript or something else. So it's just that easy to. So that's why I'm like, I don't really need the GUI. I can just type, and you can also do. I think it's -H. So you can add. That's the other thing. I'm not getting warnings or notices here. So we can add the flag. Yeah, so I see I did get 7 notices. So you can see that there's some overlap here, but again, the designers and other people are not going to use it. Oh, it does say alt logo. But I would say that should probably have a little bit more descriptive text. That's me. And I could file an issue on Drupal.org. I could go in, and I might. So it does help you. It does give you the. That gray is probably hard to read, huh? It does give you the WCAG guideline that you should do. It doesn't let you, it gives you the CSS selector, but look at that. That's a little beast. Nth child 4. You can figure it out, but it's a little easier to see in the command line. The other thing that you can do. So keep in mind. I did find this issue. It flagged something like something was giving. I want to say something that had a row of button that wasn't an A, and I'm like, what can be a button? It turns out anything can be a button. So keep that in mind. That and I looked, and there is an issue on GitHub. That's the other nice thing about the open source thing. I'm like, is this an error? What's wrong? There's disagreement on something. So I actually went, and it is a known issue with one of the dependencies, I think, of Pally, because it's only as good as a project is only good as its dependencies. So it's a known issue that's the case. The other thing that is interesting is that Site Improve doesn't like role main on the main tag. But MDN says you should do it because I guess a lot of screen readers use, Microsoft does for all of its faults. They do a lot for the community, and so they give away all this free software, all these computers and stuff. So a lot of people with visual impairments use Microsoft products. Long story short, a lot of them are using IE11 still. So IE11 does not. It's not an ARIA landmark if it doesn't have role main on it. So I'm going to keep adding role main to my main tags until everyone's using it. Yeah, sure.
Besides Chromevox, it sounds like I'm not using Windows much anymore, but what is the most typical screen reader for Windows? Is it JAWS?
I think people are still using JAWS.
That's it?
Yeah, there's a blog post, WebAIM. I think they do a study every year. And actually, because I was like, is anyone else using Chromevox? So actually, Chromevox is pretty low on the usage, I think. But I like it because it still gives me at least some insight into what it's like,
I liked it, and then Mike kept giving me a hard time about it.
Who did?
Mike Gifford, who's like one of the.
Oh.
Because I think he was just arguing that it's not as typical.
Yeah.
Like, if you're trying to pick something like use voiceover because it's more typical to the other experiences, but Vox is like open source and that, you know, like it's kind of
Yeah.
more universally available to all platforms. But
Yeah, that totally makes sense because if you know use what most people with disabilities are using, I just could. I mean, every time I switch the tab, you know, not Chrome tab, but a you know a Mac OS tab, having that constantly going, I just couldn't. I couldn't deal with it. So it's for sanity more than anything else. But yeah, that is a good point. You should probably check out a lot of different, just like browser testing. You should do accessibility testing with different technologies.
Yeah, I think voiceover, I think you can toggle it on and off pretty easy. I think it's at 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I can never remember the keys though.
You can just mute it pretty easily.
Oh yeah, okay.
And that'll help you as well.
Oh sweet.
And NVDA is also another Windows box one that's popular, but free. So if you can't afford a Josh license, it might be an alternative on a Windows device.
Yeah.
And just one other thing with voiceovers, to make sure you don't pick one of the compressed voices when they're speaking to you, because a compressed voice is more likely to take a 3-letter word in all caps and think and treat it like an acronym, whereas a non-compressed voice will understand that you were saying add, not AD.
Interesting. And that's another reason to take styles out of and keep them in your CSS rather than doing them inline. Donnie, you missed. I gave you a shout out.
Matt told me.
About-
I was
okay.
like in here in time. I was caught up with something, so thank you.
Is anyone using Pally in part of their build process? I'm curious. Yeah, how does that go?
You can hook it, I mean, so if you have like a continuous integration setup, you can hook it in there. For us, we are using Travis, so it's no different from other testing like PHP unit or the JavaScript test that Dries was mentioning earlier. So it just fires off that command and will return the errors if any are hit as the developers are deploying code.
Nice. So it's part of the deployment process. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Maybe next year I'll be doing that. I'll be leading a presentation on how to do that. You should lead a presentation on how to do that. I think that would be very interesting for people.
I think like the Pally dashboard, I know they're coming out with a new tool, Sidekick, I think it is, but that's just really amazing thing, just to kind of get an overall kind of assessment of where your sites are at, because at one point we had a dashboard managing at least like 200 of our state websites, and we could keep an eye as content was changing, and just by a little bit of extendability, we were able to crawl the entire website versus just the home pages that it typically scans. So
Oh, that's nice.
really cool stuff.
So if it's for government site?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so government, higher ed, banks are starting to get, those are the ones who are getting, for whatever reason, they're just trickling down, I guess, for accessibility, at least from my perspective. So higher ed, did I already say higher ed? You know, government, higher ed, banks, but I think it's, and rightfully so, it's here to stay, and it should be a part of what we do as in every phase of the development life cycle for a web project.
I'm curious about the Pally, like, with running something like that and getting those audits, are you getting like 100%, I don't know, like AA compliance or some metric that is reasonable, I guess?
So there's a lot of false positives that we're aware of things, but it's more of just a general kind of indicator that we need to go further with something. Typically for the build processes, just because we're submitting like chunks of code, new things of that nature, we're focusing on just that one example of that component. So we're able to just scan that individually as opposed to like the entire site. It makes it a lot easier, kind of unit testing it.
That's great.
And Koali, this is the GUI for Pally. So if the command line is intimidating to you, check this out. What was the other part of the site? You mentioned Sidekick?
Yeah, it's in their repo.
Ah, okay. Palette sidekick. Oh, that's great. All right.
Yeah, this will, if you haven't seen the palette dashboard, it's like really intuitive.
Ah, this is awesome. Oh, very cool. And you can download a CSV of the.
Yeah, and even
That's
in
sweet.
code base, you can extend that to have the testing crawl for you. You can target elements by class IDs or anything like that.
The other thing to keep in mind with Pally is I think by default it only does desktop views. So, but you can pass it. You can do different things to get it to do at all different screen sizes. Excellent. Well, if there's any other questions or comments, thanks for contributing.